That's perpetuated, by our managed vision care plans. It's perpetuated, quite frankly, by the code 920X4. Right? All these things are perpetuated in our training, in what is the definition of a comprehensive exam by payers, and also the code 92014. This is not me, again, rallying against that code. It's just, we do everything. Every time we do pupils, we do fields, we do pressure, we do refraction. Some of us will bill through refraction, some of us we don't. We do EOMs, we do cover tests, and we just sort of do and do and do. But here's the question I want you to sit with is, how often do you really need to do some of these things actually change the level of care that you're providing for the patient? In even more depth, how many times do you identify something that you wouldn't have otherwise found with some other, portion of your test? Hello and welcome to the Chris Wolfe Podcast on iCode Media. Today, I wanted to talk about reclaiming your exam room, reclaiming the tests that you're actually going to be doing for patients, and being intentional about those tests. And, well, the reason that I wanted to talk about it was because of an email, and I'll share that in a little bit. But this week, we're going to be spending a lot of time with our Practice Performance Partner Pro members in Houston, kind of working on these sorts of things. So one, it's about improving their compliance. So getting their compliance, their HR, their HIPAA, their OSHA, fraud and abuse, all that stuff up to snuff. So we're going to start doing this annually at least, but due to the response so far, probably every 6 months. And so this question was very pertinent to the types of things that we work through within Practice Performance Partners Pro, and the types of things that we do within what we call Comprehensive Optometry Simplified. And so the last thing I'll say is, this is kind of the first episode of 2026. And this has now been 1 year since the merger of iCode Education with Practice Compliance Solutions and CodeSafe Plus. It's been a great initial year. And so some of the things that we're doing within 2026 are going to be to kind of unify what we're doing within those three original companies better. So that makes a better user experience. I'm really excited with some of those things. But secondarily, really kind of continuing to help those people who want to refine their practices and their processes in their practice. I'm really excited about some of those things that we have opportunities to do with those practices. So in any case, that's why we're talking about this today. So I wanted to think about the question that I'll share with you in just a second. But as always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us. The most common questions I get include, what ophthalmological codes or evaluation and management codes should I use? What ICD-10 codes do I need to bill with this CPT code? What CPT codes can be billed together and what can't? And my favorite, how do I manage a patient who has diabetes who comes in for a quote-unquote routine eye exam? These questions really highlight the confusion and uncertainty that serves as a daunting hurdle for providers, makes it more challenging for them to care for their patients and provide those patients with the best opportunity for a lifetime of ocular health and clear vision. That's why we built iCode Education, for this specific purpose. Our mission is to provide optometrists with resources to help you understand disease states, revenue cycles, and billing and coding so that you can put that on autopilot and truly care for your patients. Check out iCodeEducation.com. That's EYECODE education.com. We've developed a premier billing and coding bundle that includes all of our billing and coding resources in one place. We also have a 10% discount code just for listeners of this podcast. Enter the coupon code EYECODEMEDIA22 at checkout. We'd love to work with you. Check out iCodeEducation.com. Not all omega-3s are created equal, and we switched to TG Omegas because the triglyceride form offers superior bioavailability, and patients actually stay on it. For dry eye management, it's one of the few supplements we feel there's a clinically improved benefit for those patients. Smoother tear film with fewer symptoms. It's an easy upgrade to the standard omega-3 conversation, so check out TG3 for your patients and your practice. So the question that really stuck with me recently that I got was it brings these relatable points to a bigger issue that so many of us have to manage in practice. So I want to share that question. It says, "Hey Chris, I hope you and the family are well, and I hope that you're having a great Christmas. I wanted to ask you directly, since I'm having a hard time finding anything specifically stated online for blood pressure measurement. Is it something that we as optometrists need to take on for all of our adult patients? I know there's a MIPS benefit, but as far as I know, we don't bill enough to worry about qualifying for MIPS with Medicare. We use the wrist cuffs, and honestly, they're not all that accurate and seem to waste previous pre-test time in getting out patients ready for the doctor. So what are your thoughts?" And I think it's such a simple question, but it really opens up a door to something that's much bigger, in my opinion. And so this episode isn't about blood pressure. It's not about, should we take blood pressure? Shouldn't we take blood pressure? Really, it's about time. It's about focus. And it's about getting out of the habit of doing things that we're just doing to check a box. And so I wanted to start there and say, we're trained with this culture of comprehensive exam, and that's perpetuated, by our managed vision care plans. It's perpetuated, quite frankly, by the code 920X4, right? So all these things are perpetuated in our training, in what is the definition of a comprehensive exam by payers, and also the code 92014. This is not me, again, rallying against that code. It's just, we do everything. Every time we do pupils, we do fields, we do pressure, we do refraction. Some of us will bill the refraction, some of us we don't. We do EOMs, we do cover tests, and we just sort of do and do and do. But here's the question I want you to sit with is, how often do you really need to do some of these things? And how often really do some of these things actually change the level of care that you're providing for the patient? In even more depth, how many times do you identify something that you wouldn't have otherwise found with some other, portion of your test? So it's not just rhetorical. I want you to think about it. How often has a confrontation field, when the patient has no additional symptoms, actually revealed something you wouldn't have otherwise caught based on history or based on other examination findings? When was the last time you did routine pupillary exam in a healthy asymptomatic patient that led you down a clinical path that changed your management? Now ask the same question about blood pressure. How often do you check blood pressure where you're like, holy cow, I didn't already know you had blood pressure from your history, or you didn't know it, you weren't already on a blood pressure medication, or I didn't see some other reason in your retina that would make me want to check blood pressure, or maybe it was a subconjunctival hemorrhage. So I want to go back to the question that our member for Practice Performance Partners was asking. They're right about wrist cuffs. We all know this, which they're not that accurate. It's taking up time in pretest. They don't qualify for MIPS, and they're wondering, is this something that I really need to be doing for every adult patient? And I think here's the bottom line. If you're not reporting MIPS and you're not in some sort of ACO or coordinated quality program that requires you to check blood pressure, then no, you're under no obligation to check blood pressure on every single patient. That doesn't mean it's never helpful, but it does mean that we should be intentional and not just reflexive. Because if you're spending time doing something that isn't reliable and doesn't change the care you deliver, that's not just wasted time. It's taking away from what you could be doing, and that's opportunity cost. And so really, I want you to think about clinical compliance over clinical judgment. Is that really what's going on? I'm just complying with what I think I should be doing as opposed to being a doctor that I'm trained to be. Look, I know a lot of this started from a good place. So the push to be more holistic, the MIPS incentive, the vision plan checklist that nudge us to mark hypertension screening for a few extra bucks. But there's the bottom line again, is if you're doing something just because someone told you to and not because it's meaningfully helpful to your patient or improves your decision making, then we're not really practicing medicine. We're just playing a game. And we didn't go to school for that. Now, sometimes we have to play a game. Again, I understand that. I understand that sometimes we have to. But if we don't have to, we really should question whether or not it's worth playing. So maybe we're working a setting where our patient population is medically underserved. I think would be an example of why you might want to do it. So again, if I want to detract and kind of answer this question for the doctor, again, which I've already answered, but sort of answer this with a little bit more nuances. I might be practicing in a place where there's an medically underserved population where maybe I am the only healthcare provider in that setting that patient is going to see in a year or in 2 years or in 5 years. And in that case, I would probably check blood pressure, right? That could be a really meaningful touch point for those patients. For practices that want a clean, unified daily disposable system, the Clarity One Day family of lenses offers it. In my practice, it's been a strategic opportunity, not just another product, because one platform covers spherical, astigmatic, and presbyopic needs. That makes staff training easier, simplifies conversations, and provides a consistent patient experience. When a single lens family can do all of that, it becomes a natural part of our daily workflow. Check it out. If you're ready to stop feeling overwhelmed and start running a safer, more profitable practice, here's the next step. First, book a strategy call with us, Practice Performance Partners. We'll uncover the biggest risks and opportunities in your practice. Then, choose the package that fits your goals. From there, we'll get you launched with confidence, with clear systems, with expert support, and with peace of mind, knowing your practice is protected and set up to grow. Don't wait until something goes wrong. Book your strategy call with us, Practice Performance Partners, today. But if we're seeing a well-managed, well-insured patient population who are plugged in with their primary care doctors on regular bases and they're taking medications and getting labs, do I really need to be spending time doing pre-testing with those patients? With a risk cuff that might not even be that reliable? Probably not. Maybe the better way to spend time would be to ask the patient, when was the last time you saw your primary care doctor? And maybe that's done at the pretest room. And maybe when the patient says, I'm not sure, I think it was within the last year, we can train our techs to say, well, that I think means probably not in the last year. And maybe we do want to check their blood pressure. So, we've trained ourselves. We've been trained by external forces to believe that thoroughness means doing everything, but thoroughness isn't the same as effectiveness. And the real challenge is not checking every box, it's knowing which boxes matter and how to train our team to check the box when it's applicable, when we want it. Maybe I do think blood pressure in my patient population, I might say, we're a well-insured, well-medically with patients who have good access to medical services. And maybe the question is, maybe the checkbox become at pretest, a question, have you seen your primary care doctor within the last year? And the answer is hedged by the patient or no. Now we're going to check blood pressure. Maybe I'm going to add it to a patient that has subconjunctival hemorrhages. Maybe I'm going to add it when I see, peripheral retinal hemorrhaging or any type of retinal hemorrhaging. Or maybe I'm going to add it when I see, cotton wool spots in a patient who is unremarkable. Maybe I'm going to add it in a patient who has normal tension, normal intraocular pressure, but I'm seeing other RNFL defects. Maybe I'm going to add it when, so you could start to kind of run down these situations where, yes, I'm going to do it. And yes, I can automate it more in my mind. So I'm not having to make decision after decision after decision, but I'm saving time in total. And that's when that's kind of thinking through this in a way that makes sense. It's not something that a vision plan or a MIPS measure or a default exam template can tell us. It's clinical judgment. It's the medicine that we practice. It's the way we help patients. So I want to be a little bit more provocative. There's a decent chance that you're doing blood pressure checks more for your own peace of mind or to satisfy an insurance checkbox than your own patient's benefit. I do think that's probably the case. And if it's true, if it is the case, it's okay. I've been there. I've totally been there. But I want to be honest about it. I want to talk about it. I want to think about what I can do with that time instead. What can I do with that time where I am the best person to manage that specific thing that I can find with the patient? So as an example, is that checkbox taking away from maybe doing a better cover test at distance and near? Is that checkbox taking away from me doing an NPC in a valid way, maybe repeating it 3 times? I don't know. I don't know what that is. I'm just saying, like, maybe it is doing those things. What if I use that time to do one more dry eye test, or educate the patient about the retinal imaging that I'm finding, or actually listen when the patient mentions that they're using an over-the-counter drop for a few months? What if my team had time to get more useful pieces of data that make the patient feel important, literally and metaphorically, right? Maybe they are maybe they feel better about your exam. That's not an intangible benefit. That's a real benefit that patients will bind the patient to the practice and have them tell you more information, right? Allowing you to dive deeper into real things that patient has going on that may or may not be related to other problems. So, we're being pulled in 100 directions: managed vision care, incentives to screen, audits, productivity, protocols. But I think the most important part is we're still the doctor. We still get to decide what matters in our exam room. And if something doesn't help us take better care of our patient in the chair in front of us today, right now, that individual, maybe it doesn't belong in the exam. Not today, and maybe not ever. So here's my ask. Take a hard look at the things you're doing by habit, the tests you're doing, the screening tests you're doing, the boxes you're checking, and ask yourself, does this change what I do for the patient? Does it change for what I'm doing for enough patients that it matters clinically? Or is it just part of the script that I never question? You don't have unlimited time, and you don't have unlimited staff, and you have to have some judgment here. And I think that's worth more than any checkbox that you can do. So I think, the bottom line when I think about this is that just be intentional. If you want to do blood pressure on those patients, okay, think about going back in your clinical exam. Maybe even if you don't want to stop, right? Maybe this is the way to evaluate it. Maybe you kind of still have this internal drive to say, well, I got to do blood pressure on every single patient. Maybe it's not MIPS. Maybe it's not a checkbox. Maybe it's just you continued it from school. You continued it from a mentor. Great. But then I want you to ask yourself, okay, well, let's go back through, or maybe prospectively go into your patient population and say, okay, over the next month, I'm going to do blood pressure checks on every patient over the age of 18, because that's what we do. And then I want you to see how many of those patients did you identify that didn't know they had a problem, that you found a problem, and you were able to actually intervene in a meaningful way. And if that number is, I don't know what the number is going to be, but if it's not compelling to you, then maybe that's something you want to drop, and then be more specific about when you're going to order it. And then think about, okay, well, maybe I'm not doing a great cover test at near on a patient, or an NPC. I'm going to add that instead. Track it for the next month. How many convergence insufficiency patients did we find that we asked one question afterwards, after we identify a patient with a minimal exo at distance and a large exo at near and a NPC that's 10 centimeters. And then we asked them a question. Hey, do you ever get headaches when you're on a computer? Yeah, I do. It feels like my eyes aren't working very well together. Okay, well, now we can fix that. So how many of those patients do you have? And then ask yourself, the amount of time that I spent with that patient, was it better for me to spend it on the near cover test? Or was it better for us to spend on a blood pressure measurement? I don't know the answer. I suspect I know the answer, but I don't know the answer. And again, I will also concede that the answer may be different in different patient populations in different areas of the country. So this is not about blood pressure. Again, I said this at the beginning. It's about being intentional about the tests that we ask. So thanks again to the listener who asked this question. You know who you are, and I have so much respect for this listener and this member. And I hope it gave you something to think about, and maybe even gave you permission to let go of some of the things that aren't really benefiting your patients. So I hope this episode was helpful. We will be trying to dive into more interviews over the 2026, not just monologues, but I hope this monologue was helpful. It kind of maybe gives you a peek into this sort of things that we do to try to help practices refine their processes and then really dive into the care that they are the best at delivering for their patient population. So have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.